I've said this to him, and he goes, yeah, you're right. But I'd be careful with that. Otherwise, I think he does a marvelous service for the church. But he does. He uses astrophysics, his background, so on, whether it's the Big Bang or any number of things, that doctrine of creation. I'd be very careful about doing that.
Test 1, 2, 3. Can you hear this mic at all?
Yeah.
You got a quick question. University life is your academic freedom, freedom to teach, and the balance to teach with fidelity to the church. Context: I lived in an unnamed American city on the West Coast, participated in an unnamed Catholic university, because that's not the point, and I witnessed both sanctioned Catholic clubs as well as sanctioned courses that were so far, almost comically beyond the pale of ethical, balanced fidelity to the healthy teachings of the church. How do we find a balance between academic freedom and fidelity to the Catholic teaching so that our universities don't continue a headlong descent into Catholic in name only versus a lively place of goodness and truth and beauty?
Well, as you might know, did everybody hear the question?
Yes.
The issue was the concern about the drift to the left in Catholic universities. The tendency that there are very few universities of any size, colleges are different, universities of any size that drift to the right. And when people say, why are universities so liberal, I say, are you talking about the business school? You're talking about engineering? Law school, yeah. Social sciences, quite a bit. Humanities, sometimes it's loony. I understand that. Those people in the social science, humanities make the least money. They have the least clout in the university. People that produce business leaders, engineers, and so on, there's a lot more money in those areas. So I sometimes think the worry is overstated. Second, on the question of fidelity, when the decree on Catholic higher ed was promulgated in the United States, it was expected that a theologian, I'm a historian, but I'm also a theologian, are to ask for a mandatum from the local bishop. I had no problem. I have a mandatum. If a guy is teaching constitutional law, you should be able to say, this person is competent. And they present what is the recent scholarship. Now, they may have their own opinion, but they know their stuff. I would say the same thing for theologians. You present the tradition in its integrity, but you also talk about some of the difficulty back and forth and so on. Finally, we've made a God out of diversity, in my opinion, and inclusion. Got to be careful with those words. Young people love it. They use it all the time. At our University of Dayton, when I was there, we always said diversity within a common mission. If the diversity is outside that mission, that is distinctive for a Catholic university, you're inviting trouble. If you just look for diversity in a faculty, it's not going to be very long before there'll be no diversity between universities. They'll all be the same. So, it's a work in progress. I think there's a good argument for the mandatum. The only danger would be if you had a really cranky bishop. And there might be different standards in different dioceses. But, according to the decree of the Vatican, if a bishop wants to take back the mandatum from a theologian, he's got to give a written statement of the reasons. So that's some due process. Good questions. I spent the afternoon in prayer anticipating this.
Yeah, similar question. You've talked about, highlighted the increase in secularism for 50, 60 years, particularly in the U.S. It seems to me that rate is increasing, perhaps you could make the argument. How do you see that reversing?
The increase in, what was the word?
Increased secularism in the secularism.
Oh, secularism, yeah. Well, I'm a Catholic. Remember, Catholics have a vision of the human person that is basically hardwired for religion. That is not a naive optimism, because we also say grace builds on nature. Our nature is good. It's basically good. Do we do evil things? Do we sin? Yes, we do. But we don't think of ourselves as some strict Calvinist would, being totally depraved. There are not many of them around. So my view is secularism is a surface phenomenon. It's promulgated by media in so many ways. You get good exceptions, like 2 popes. I'm glad people see it. It's of interest, and so on. I think if you can get the attention of people, young people, if you can say something that touches the heart, they know they've been missing something. We just have to relearn the vocabulary to be able to speak to the heart of people. Too often it happens when someone goes to the podium and starts a sermon, you can almost predict where it's going to go. So I find, this is one of the reasons I find it kind of exciting to be teaching at USC. I love Dayton, I think it's a great university. But in the senior seminar that I had, 10 students on religions and violence was the subject. I had three of the students identified as atheists, 2 as homosexuals. They said this, okay. But the quality of the discussion, I saw the evaluations after the course was over, the quality of the discussions, the willingness to challenge, the willingness to listen, things that I've said here, I say to them. I don't feel any restriction at USC on what I teach. So I think after a while, I wouldn't be surprised if we find some way to break out of it. I just came back from 2 weeks in Africa. I was working with young religious in Africa, in Kenya, Nairobi. The quality, the depth, the joy, vibrant. These are men who don't have to be drunk with the lights out to dance. And it's beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. We may end up with Africa saving the church. Who knows? Maybe just 2 more questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the rise in secularism here, and at the same time, you mentioned the falling amount of abortions that are done or performed in the United States over a number of years.
Right.
And yet, in all the churches and all the masses I've attended, I've never once heard a priest give a homily on abortion as murder. That, coupled with the fact that one of our political parties has actively pushed, shall we say, women's right to choose.
Yeah.
And how does that happen now? How does that abortions going down every year?
How does it happen? I think a number of things. One of the things is there's more of a network for women in crisis pregnancies. Second, there is access to contraception. Now, is that a big solution? I don't think it is. It can be an illusion. Third, the economy has improved. The economy has improved. Fourth, you have more active, encouraged pro-life initiatives. You have things on state levels and so on and so forth. So it's being battled out in the trenches, day in and day out. So there are a lot of factors that are influencing this. As to why priests don't preach on it, I think that they're very hesitant to do it because they probably have talked with women who've had abortions, and they realize what a minefield it is and how difficult it is to take into consideration. Not every abortion is a murder. Every abortion is the ending of a human life. Murder is full understanding and intent. We have manslaughter in our legal code. So it'd be naive to say that this is not the end of a human life that is sacred. But to say it's murder is to imply that they know exactly what they're doing and they want to do it. Be careful about that. You had a question.
Father, the question is back here.
Oh, yeah.
You got the mic, go ahead, sorry.
I'm right here. This morning I tried to listen to your sermon. I say tried because I heard it, but I want to play back a thread that I thought I heard you talk about, and then ask you, well, what is the not solution, approach, potential remedy. Here is the thread, that our generations are changing from attending school, baptism, going to church, to maintaining a religious commitment, their spirituality, but not attending church. And then within the generations, and I represent three, even the baptism
Right.
becomes more elective. And so as a father, as a grandfather, I look at this and go, no, I don't direct, I don't tell what to do, but I try to give some guidance or reflection to get people, my people.
It's a great question.
So where was the seed? What seed can you?
What can you do? What can we do?
And I'll work on it.
Yeah, so everybody heard, it's a grandfather worrying about the children and the grandchildren and the growing number of people that are called nuns, N-O-N-E-S. People that believe but don't belong. That's one thing to know. Most of these young people still believe and even pray. They're not atheists. There is a growing number of atheists. It's very interesting. They're almost exclusively male, and they're almost exclusively exposed to graduate education. So they're very educated, as they say. Now, why would that be? Only dumb people are believers? No, the truth of the matter is a lot of higher education is liberal and secular and empirically driven, and so as a consequence, you never hear a really good argument for something other than the empirical verification method. That happens, and that's unfortunate. But with these young people, what do we do? How do we do it? So let me tell you a story. I alluded to, I didn't give the same sermon at every Mass. I mean, I think, as you can tell, I suffer from ADD. It all comes with, but, so my youngest sister lives in Sedona, Arizona. Her husband's retired. She's very active in the parish, all of this. He was raised Protestant, but he never really got the bug, unfortunately. They're terrific Protestants, but he, not one of them. They have 3 kids. All 3 went through Catholic grade school, high school, and college. None of them goes to church now. So the youngest, who's a wonderful police officer in Phoenix, if you ever get pulled over by a kid named Miller, and so it was a Saturday, I was visiting. He and 2 buddies that had the same profile, Catholic school, blah, 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 also not gone to church. They come back after playing 18 holes of golf. And they love golf. So we're sitting out on the deck, and we're having some drinky poo. And my brother-in-law was there too. And the guys are out on the deck. And I said to him, have you guys heard about this growing number of people your age who just don't go to church anymore? Oh, yeah. I said, why do you think that is? Why do you think people don't go? And then different things that come back and so on and so forth. And I said to him, you guys love golf, don't you? Yeah, we do. And I said, if you want to get better at golf, what do? You practice, you play more. If you really get serious about being good, what would you do? You get a coach. It's no different with religion. You practice it, you find a spiritual director, you nourish your spiritual life. The only explanation I have is you love golf much more than God. At which point, my brother-in-law got up. He says, I'm getting out of here. He got another drink. But I planted the seed, and I gave them an analogy. And I hope gradually you can turn this around. Never, ever, ever underestimate the example, the power of the example you give. Mothers are often assumed to be the ones that bear the religious tradition. There are recent studies that say the father can play a key role. Somebody once said that women by nature are religious, men only by effort. So you find a way to talk about it. You don't want to be a nag. What can you do? You can say, hey, help me to understand. How's this working for you? What are you thinking? Let's just talk about it. I'm not trying to tell you to go to church, but let's talk about it. You can open the conversation that way. Sometimes that just closes it down. They don't want to talk, then you don't do it. But I don't lose hope on this. I find genuine interest in stuff that I'm trying to teach by people with no religious background whatsoever. So we stay at it. Never underestimate the power of your example. Thank you.
Let me give you a footnote to your story. I like what you said about Paul. I like how to improve, but I would have that analogy focus on the bag that you carry. How many different clubs do you have in it? What are those clubs for, and how do they improve your game? From the religious perspective, I'm using religion in the context of that.
Sure.
Spiritual religion.
Sure.
There are tools that you gather and you sharpen by participating, even being aware and open to the possibilities. The bag of clubs.
I agree. I agree entirely. There are tools. There's also, folks, music. Never underestimate the importance of good music. The Catholic Church, in my opinion, has never invested in that the way they should. Some religious communities do it in a way that lifts your souls. But not enough parishes do it. That's desperately needed. Secondly, silence. Because they're constantly 24 buzz. Silence. I forbid cell phones and laptops in my classes. They're not allowed. I don't allow them. If I can't handle it with them, what's the point? So I would not give up hope. There's good stuff going on. I want to thank all of you. I'll be glad to talk to any of you afterwards. Thank you for coming. God bless you. Keep up the good work and witness. And by the way, again, my executive director, Dr. Becky Serling, you have some things that might be of interest to you that we're working on, including the young people who don't go to church. We have a pamphlet, we have a number of things. Do you want to say something, Becky?
Sure. Sure, I can use my outside voice. We do have one of the really amazing things about the Institute is the way that Jim has laid the foundation for connecting really solid, high-level scholarship that connects to the Catholic intellectual tradition and connects to the church. And one of the best, most recent things that the Institute scholars have worked on is this pamphlet called Youth, the Catholic Church, and Our Future. And I brought a number of them. I don't think I've got enough for everybody, but it is available. You can download it from our website. So I'm happy to give you this. But as you can tell, this is a hot button for all of us. We're all concerned about our kids, and this actually addresses it pretty specifically. So it's a wonderful thing that Jim has begun. What's the website? It's IF as in Frank, ACS.com. And I've got, we don't like the F in there, but I've got some stuff over there that has the website.
I wanted to ask you also about books and the website. My son, I want to take it, Tommy, that's interested in